Hi, I'm Heinbach and it's good to have you back. As anyone who has ever tried to assemble a modular synthesizer with their wallet and a screwdriver knows, it is not easy to create a cohesive instrument. Especially if you try to keep its size constrained and don't build a monster of a wall. There's always a module you're hesitant to get rid of in favor of another. It feels like compromise after compromise, and it's a long process to get something that speaks to you and becomes an instrument. In comes the Voltage Lab 2 that Pittsburgh Modular sent me to play with. It is a semi-modular, self-contained synthesizer, and to me it hits just that sweet spot between functionality and musicality. It's rare that a new instrument comes into my studio that inspires me as the Voltage Lab does. I was immediately drawn to its sounds and I could not stop patching it. Not to test it, but to make music with it. It took me back to why I started Eurek in the first place. When I got into modular 12 years ago, I was looking for an instrument capable of the West Coast style of synthesis as pioneered by Don Buchla. I had encountered that for the first time in the fantastic Madrona Labs Alto software synthesizer, and I wanted a hardware version of that. I assembled a system that did similar things with the modules available at the time, but it did not feel as much of a cohesive instrument as Alto did, or a music easel, or as the Voltage Lab does now. Voltage Lab is smaller than the music easel, cheaper and has a broader sonic palette. Especially its oscillators are unique and full of color. Voltage Lab 2 is also surprisingly useful for harmony-based music. With a bit of patching, you can get 4 or more voice harmonies going. The keyboard works well to play solo lines with feeling, and the sequencing options are rather rich. I'm very much a no menu guy when it comes to modular, so the menu functions confused me a bit at first, but that passed quickly as I got used to it. It won't replace the Surge Touch keyboard as my favorite synth interface, because that is bigger and more simple but allows for much programming complexity. But I enjoy the level of comfort the controller brings. I mean, you can even save sequences on it. Let's stop the music for a bit and have a closer look. When you turn the Voltage Lab 2 on for the first time, it won't make any sound. You need to make patched connections. Simplest is an oscillator out to the output. The wavefolding on the oscillator is wonderful. One of the coolest features of the oscillators is you can sequence between the different waveforms, and the automatic gain control will try to match the levels. Sounds so good. Let's try the second oscillator. Ooh, lovely. That's so low that it creates these clickety rhythms. Let's pitch it up a bit. Change the symmetry of the pulses. You can hard sync the two oscillators. oscillators are routed to a nicely clean ring modulator, which you can also use for external input. And there's also a crisp bit crusher. There are two function generators that can trigger each other in various ways and also run as a second pair of oscillators. There's no traditional filter in the Liveform Systems 2. Instead, you get two low-pass gates with resonance. They control the frequency spectrum and the amplitude, and they can also be pinged or used as regular VCAs. For modulation, there's a bucket brigade flanger that I absolutely love because it can also be used for coupler strong. The built-in bucket brigade delay can do that too. Then there's a bunch of utilities, noise, sample and hold, a smart random sequencer, and lots of MIDI functions. I need to explore it another time. I really don't use MIDI too much. composition, the voltage lab is not the instrument I would pick if I wanted dark, heavy tones. Not because it can't do that, but because the oscillators sing beautifully in the mid-range and upper bass range. They are the star of the show, and I want them front and center in my mix. So I used either the function generators for simple synthesizer sounds or added another synthesizer. Here it is, the THC TTSH, an ARP 2600 clone. While the mixing options are decent enough, running all the voices through one output is a bit limiting. So it's better to patch various parts of the synth out to a mixer or audio interface. It's semi-modular, you can just do what you want. Separating the parts also helps with adding effects to the various voices you can get running from one patch. The integrated delay works to add some space to a signal, but it does not sound that special, and you might want to use it for coupler strong, so it's good to outsource effect duties. The build quality is very good, everything feels nice to touch, and I did not encounter any deal-breaking bugs, and I tried. I did manage to trip up the AGC circuit on the first lap oscillator a few times at extreme settings, so the oscillator would get quiet until I wiggled it. Not something you will encounter in regular playing. It seems this was tested well before shipping, which is as it should be, but seems to be less and less the case, sadly. Lifeforms 2 is a compact system, which is both a blessing and a curse. It can be hard to read the ins and outs on the patch bay, and using thin patch cables like these is something I would definitely recommend. Layout-wise, there's enough space to wiggle dials decently. It does not feel cramped, so even if you're used to 4U like Buchla or Surge, the Lifeforms will work for you. any semi-modular or small modular case, there's always a function you are missing. It is a compromise of size and features. But the Voltage Lab 2 is assembled so well that in most cases I could reach my musical goals and did not run into a brick wall. There's always another way in the Voltage Lab system to go about things. And of course, you can expand it with a side rack of modules easily. But as it is a rather well-balanced instrument. Very musical and inspiring system. I just can't stop patching with it. It brings me a lot of joy. I'm in love with the sound of the oscillators. Can't say more than that. I wish this was around when I got into Eurorack. It would have saved me a lot of money. Find music from this video and a sample pack on my Patreon. And Patreon is how I can keep the channel going, so thank you very much for your support over there. If you have any more questions, do put them in the comments below or visit the subreddit. Thank you for watching. I'll be seeing you in the next one. Bye.